Hello everybody, I'm back, and look at me go, I got my hair cut. But I didn't pay for this. I actually had a little sneaky trade with my barber. You see, I do his graphic design and he cuts my hair for free. And so today I want to talk to you about bartering. You know, when you start off, a lot of people might want help from you. They might ask you if you can do their design, but you'll often find that they say, hey look, I can't really pay you for this. Now, it's a pretty crappy position to be in when you start off because you're a bit trapped. You need a portfolio, you need some clients to put in that portfolio, but also you pay the same bills as everyone else. So what I suggest in these situations sometimes is, can you work out a barter with someone? Personally, for what I charge, I don't think my barber should have to pay that much for a designer, but I also don't think he should get crap work from whoever he can hire. So I look at his skill set and I think he's incredibly talented and has got a lot of work under his belt. Why don't we trade? Today I'm going to be talking about a bit of branding I did for one of my friends. Now, Josh from Vinewood is one of my good mates, so I was very happy to barter with him. He has a great company where he does videos for all different sorts of clients, as you can see here. And he came to me with a fun challenge. He wanted to update his branding, keep a similar flavor, but move into that sort of 1950s rubber hose style of illustration. We agreed for this that we'd do a barter. I would do the branding, and in return, he's shooting a film clip for me. To me, this is perfect. I don't have the skills to shoot video, and he didn't have the background in design to make his idea come to life. So here we are. When it comes to bartering on work, or doing very low paid work, there's one thing I always try and keep in mind. Are the people coming to me because they want my work? Or are they coming to me because I'm the only designer they know? Now there's two very different sorts of outcomes here, which for Josh was perfect. He liked some work I'd done for Rolling Knicks. This was some brief shirts I got printed in relation to squash. I looked at the current squash market and realized there was no such thing as a squash t-shirt. So why not make some for the other losers out there that care as much as I do? With all my hard work, I was able to sell at least 2 t-shirts to strangers in Europe. And there's a very high chance that those shirts were actually received. I don't know because I never followed up after I sent the order, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night feeling quite guilty about this. But that's okay, because they don't know where I live. So Josh reached out, and he sent through his existing branding. From here, you can see in his original design, he used nice, tight, upright letters. Josh was happy to move away from this though. He was keen to look into that rubber hose style of animation and design that I was talking about earlier. This sort of design was really pioneered by one guy named Max Fleischer and his family. If you don't know the animation, you definitely would have seen the resurgence in these logos in probably the last 5 to 10 years. It's a really common thing that you see now. And I gotta say, there's a lot of pitfalls that people fall into here, particularly with the character design, but that's for the next episode. So when Josh reached out, he had a lot of ideas. To start with, we thought we'd get the lettering right. We looked at what existed and thought, what can we do to sort of jazz this up a little bit? I didn't want to move fully away from the original feeling of Josh's stuff. I feel like there's some really cool stuff here. The colors work well. And obviously the hint to the sort of rubber hose style that we ended up introducing was already there. So my favorite thing to do when it comes to lettering, start with a pencil and some paper and just start sketching. It doesn't have to be pretty, you just have to get the idea down. I find what can be really helpful here is just start off with a pen, pencil, and think about drawing single line letters. So think about something like the sort of writing you did when you were in primary school. Here you can really focus on how big you want the letters, what sort of proportions they have, their relation to each other. And when you're just doing a single line, it's really easy to think about, do I want swashes? Do I want some ligatures? How am I going to do this? If you start drawing the outlines of letters, that's when you can start getting into trouble pretty quickly. You're sort of committed to how tall the letters are and how wide they're going to be before you get a chance to experiment with that sort of stuff. You'll also find that you can get wildly different outcomes if you look at the weighting of letters alone. If you've got cursive and it's super tight and angled, then you're probably going to end up with something like Edwardian script. But if you go really wide, have long stems and thin crossbars, you're going to end up with something a lot more curvy and something a bit more 70s. Now, another thing that I want to talk to you guys about. This is something I really struggled with when I started design. Sometimes I'd start working on something. Pretty quickly I could tell it wasn't working. But I was committed. I'd started doing the drawing and I wanted to see it to completion. Now there's definitely something to be said about sticking out designs. Sometimes you think you've got the right idea and you're just struggling with the execution. But sometimes I notice, and I still notice this today, it's easy to get stuck going down a path and you can tell it's not going to work. Stop before you get too far. It's really easy to work too hard on something like this And if you get to the stage where you present it to the client, you might find yourself fighting for an idea that even you don't believe in. But then you've got this sunk cost fallacy of all the time you've put into it, so you want to see it come to fruition. Sometimes there's a big skill in just being able to understand what the client wants and whether or not you're offering the right thing from the start. Exploration can be really good. But if you present a board and there's 5 or 6 ideas there that they're not even close to what the client wanted, they're going to look at that and think, what am I paying you for? I also find it super helpful to start talking to the clients as soon as you can. Don't sit on something because you're afraid to present it to someone. It's better to get their idea and get their feedback, even if it's a no, as soon as you can, so you don't waste time. Sometimes you'll find that these weird ideas end up going in an even better direction. In my next video, when I talk about the character design, you'll see that Josh and I started in one area and then really explored some other directions. So with the lettering here, I presented this to Josh, he was on board, and I got to vectoring. With this sort of vector work, I use Illustrator, and I always try and make sure my beziers are on the absolute upper and outer extremities of any letter. This means you end up with nice clean designs. All your lines will look really crisp, and you won't end up with any sort of breaks in the line, any sort of awkward dents, and these weird overshot lines where things just don't happen to match up properly. So here we've got the first outline of the letters. With this, I always try and keep in mind, I want the letters to be separate so that I can change them over time. This also helps if you're iterating on ideas and you want to see some variation on one of the letters. So after finishing this outline and getting approval from Josh, we looked about how we could add a bit more depth here. We decided a shadow would work really well. At one point we looked at an inline for the letters, but after a while we decided this was just too much noise. Sometimes you think adding those extra details is going to add a lot more, but a lot of the time simplicity is key, particularly if you want the logo to work at low scales. So with all this stuff done, there's just one more little secret. This is a little thing I do in Illustrator sometimes. It's super helpful when it comes to script. Sometimes I'll do a design and look back and think, I don't feel like I nailed that, I don't know what's missing. But, little secret, you can select your type, simply go to shear, and add a little bit of an angle to this. This can just add a little something, a little je ne sais quoi, a little joie de vivre, a little soup de jour. Thankfully, Josh loves color, and he's not afraid of big bright colors. And so that's how we came up with the lettering. So there you have it. In the next video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I finished off the character design. This is a really interesting challenge, and we got to explore some really fun stuff here. I also want to talk to you about some of the common mistakes I see in these sort of illustrations. I'm not saying I'm the master at them, but a lot of people who are starting off and are interested in this style end up making the same mistakes that you see sort of universally. They're really basic things, so they're really easy to address. Until next time, I think I'm legally required to say Moss, bathysphere, rider. Moss, bathysphere, rider. Moss, bathysphere, rider. Oh, sorry. Like and subscribe. Thanks.